Another suck of the say, and welcome to Shift+F1, a podcast about speedy race cars. That, by the way, is Australian for apparently expressing respect with a combination of wonder and fear, which is just how I feel at the start of every F1 season. I'm Drew Scanlon. Joining me, Danny O'Dwyer. How are you, Danny?
I am fantastic. I'm feeling energetic, which belies the fact that daylight savings happened and we are recording this very early in the morning. But yes, if there's... Hey, look, they're awake in Australia. It's probably dinner time down there right now.
That's right. Also joining us, Rob Zachney. How are you, Rob?
Also surprisingly sleepy. But that is because the dogs don't let me have any of the bed.
If you are new to this podcast, a very warm welcome to you. And if you are new to Formula One itself, we recommend listening to our preseason primer episode, which assumes no prior F1 knowledge and explains how the sport works and who everybody is. So if you'd like to go back and listen to that, it's episode 298. It's just one episode ago. We just did it.
We did. We just did that thing. We did it.
Wow. Next episode's 300.
Oh my God. We have to go topless, like the Battle of Thermopylae.
That's right. The hot gates. Also, this show would not be possible without our audience over at patreon.com/shiftf1, where every month we release ad-free versions of the podcast, along with bonus podcasts and videos that are exclusive for our patrons that cover racing documentaries and films, F1 video games, experiments with other racing series, and a lot of weird things. So if you would like to support the show and get access to all that fun stuff, head over to patreon.com/shiftf1 or click the link in the show notes. What's going on this month, Danny?
Well, this month we have introductory offers. There's never been a better time to be a Shift F1 patron. If you've been listening to this podcast and you've been sitting on the fence, well, I'm about to tip you off that fence with some hot introductory offers. We have two of them running until the end of the month, just so you know. That is April 1st is when it'll end.
Lol.
We have ones for, yes, exactly. You'll be the fool if you don't take advantage of these offers. Of course, we have, there's two different versions. If you sign up to our monthly Patreon, which is that they, take a couple of bucks out of your account every month. We are doing an introductory offer of 90%, which is the most we can do. 90% off of your first month on our Patreon for the $5 and $10 tiers. And the offer code in celebration of everyone's favorite, maybe second favorite Australian F1 driver, Mark Webber, Multi21. Multi21, Seb. Multi21. That is the code. Multi21, MULTI, digit 2, digit 1. Or if you just go over to the Patreon, there should be a little button on the tiers saying, hey, do you want 90% off this thing? It might just be on by automatic, actually. So if you sign up for a monthly, you get 90% off with Multi21. And if you want to sign up to annual, it's 8% off for the year if you do it as an annual. So if you want to just sign up for the 2025 season and do it in one big annual chunk, you get 8% off, which is pretty close to our standard offering over there as well. We will be continuing incredible amounts of Patreon bonus content as well over on our Patreon. We are going to be tackling Drive to Survive Season 7, which I've already watched. I binged it the minute it went live, actually midnight on Thursday.
Wow.
It happened. Right. I was in there. I was like, show me how much of this Christian Horner stuff you guys talked about. Turns out quite a lot. More than I was expecting. So yes, I would suggest if you want to check that podcast out and all the other bonus pods we've done recently, you get access to all that stuff. You get access to years, like 7 years probably at this stage, more maybe, I don't know,
including both Italian jobs.
Exactly. Now, if that's not enough of an incentive, I simply do not know what will be. But we're working on it. And a massive thanks to all of our incredible title sponsors. Some new names in here as well. Thank you to Matt and Harmony. Thank you. Deange, It's a Me Ferrario, Get Rich Die Ryan, Agave ATX, Cyphus Training, Turf SCS, at Team Blackjack, Michael Maves, Cigarettes.
We can't have those in F1. What are you doing?
We just had someone call themselves Cigarettes, which is a fantastic Formula One in joke, I just want to say. Very good. Olivia Evans, telemetrydeck.com, FTC, Drew Stewart, Bailey Foote. Always amazed at what Patreon considers a name. Abraham Getchell. Bunny Fiend has done has replaced the I in Bunny Fiend with a 1. So it's kind of Bunny F1 end.
Oh,
That makes
amazing.
sense. So
That's great.
I'm just going to say Bunny F1 End. Bunny F1 End, Sniggs, Alex Goucher, Max Voltar, Jeff Foster, Troy Stammer, William Rumpf, Lachlan the Madden Man, Samurai Love Story, and Jason Kelly. Thank you all
Amazing.
so much. Yeah.
I might go with Matt and Harmony.
Harmony, Matt and Harmony. What did I say? Harmony?
Harmony. And I was like, that's odd.
That's one of those I'm Irish and I don't understand names kind of
That's
things.
the thing
I
that,
think.
that cleans the ice in a hockey rink.
A harmony?
A Harmony.
A harmony. Man, oh man. Thank you to Matt and Harmony, and apologies for saying your name wrong. After
We're going to
you
get an email.
gave us-
Actually, it's Harmony.
God, Harmony. Look, I know you're in there, Harmony. Please, do it for Danny. Thank you all so much. Let's talk about some Formula One shenanigans.
Yes, well, we've had cars on track already, even though we've not yet hit the first race of the season, which is this weekend in Australia. But we were testing in Bahrain. 3 days of testing occurred. No big catastrophes like a car not being ready. No one had to fly a front wing next to them in coach.
Alpine
to
also
the track.
didn't have a nightmare like last year.
Oh, what happened to them?
Oh, could you remember last year their testing was just like horrific. Just their car was just an absolute piece of trash. Like immediately in a way that like, hey, we can't really know everything from testing because testing is sort of sends out false positives sometimes. But Alpine's performance was so bad, it was like, oh no, this is not good.
And false negatives. People
That's
do
true.
the sandbag. There was a red flag on day one due to a power failure at the track. The cars were going around. All the lights just turned off. It was at dusk.
There was a red flag on the last day when a bus just drove onto the track.
Yes.
took the wrong road, and it was just like
What was so? Wait, so was it just a bus? Was it like a tour bus?
it was like a big bus, like not a huge bus, but like a 40-seater bus or something. Just
It
a
looked
white
like
bus.
like an airport shuttle or something.
Yes, exactly. And it just kind of, I don't think anyone was in it except the driver, but yeah, they ended
Well,
up like,
Burn My Landers really falling in hard times.
look, Daniel Ricciardo's going to try anything to break back into F1.
These are good jokes. We did get some rain on day two, which was unexpected.
In Bahrain?
Brought out some intermediate tires in
This
Bahrain.
made me so angry because Digital Foundry does like these tech videos
Yes.
of video games, and one of their games they go to a lot is the F1 series. And the footage they chose was downpour in Bahrain, and I was like, "What are we doing here? Like, what are we like? Come on, that ain't real." The game does the game even let you have rain in Bahrain? And then this happened, and I was
That's
like,
amazing.
"Guess in time of climate change, you just gotta open up the weather options for every single track."
Yeah. Yep.
How long did I must have missed that on day two. I had no idea.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But yeah, some solid riding. Nobody did fewer than 133 laps, which was Stroll, and I think he was feeling ill. And also not a lot of obvious car changes, just to be expected because most teams are focusing on 2026.
Some more than others. Aston
true.
Martin.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe not Ferrari because I expect the battle here. And this is a good episode for predictions.
Yes.
I expect the battle to be, Ferrari, McLaren, and Red Bull, kind of like it was last year. Red Bull didn't win the Constructors' Championship because of Perez, but perhaps Lawson will be better. And potentially Mercedes, since my understanding of the 2024 car was that it still had elements of that failed direction that they went with in 2022, whereas this car seems more derived, like all the other cars, from last year's Red Bull. And if you are new to the sport, everyone copies from everyone else. And in fact, it's funny, Sam Collins has some great technical deep dives from testing that I think are on the F1 YouTube channel. I'm going to make
Awesome.
a note here to put them in the show notes if I can find them. He was pointing out that Sauber, because they placed last in the championship last year, they've had the most wind tunnel and computational fluid dynamics time allotted to them by the rules as a result. And because they couldn't work on the 2026 car until January, we have seen that they've come up with a really unique kind of side pod shape.
Oh, funny.
So it could be that the top teams may end up copying from lower down teams just because they may have broken through on some technical innovations. So it's not just people copying Red Bull because they're Red Bull and they do well, though that does happen. It's everyone copying from everyone else. It's just a matter of, whether laymen like us can actually pick it out.
Although that Kick Sauber car looks like a piece of trash, so we'll see.
They got enough. They got enough computation time to really go in some bad directions.
Yeah, they're
They got-
bottom of the barrel this year, unfortunately, for those guys.
So we'll probably, I think, as a result of 2026, see fewer in-season upgrades as a result of that focus. But who changes focus to next year and when will be really interesting. So we will stay tuned. Other notes that I have here, the Red Bull car is apparently pretty different under the hood, according to them. One thing we saw in testing a lot was the Haas bodywork kept flying apart. So that'll be something to watch for in Australia. Let's see. Yeah, a lot of fun bodywork as the teams are experimenting with different parts, but we'll only really know for sure once qualifying comes in Australia.
Yeah, and the other thing we're going to sort of battle with a little bit is this whole like mini DRS issue where there's a mid-season. What is it? There's like is it after?
They're banning it after like 8 races or something like
Yeah.
that. It was real classic, like uncommitted.
Yes.
Well, I don't know. It's kind of illegal, but you built it, so you can use it, but then you have to stop.
Yeah, and just to reset, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, so basically the on this, it's the rear wings that are basically, McLaren had sort of dialed this in pretty good last year, where essentially under just top speed drag, it's creating a sort of mini opening in the rear wing, similar to the DRS system, which creates a large opening, but only happens under certain conditions if you're a second behind the car in front of you as a means of overtaking them. But basically, it's a way of reducing drag on straights, which is what you want. You don't want it on corners because then you might lose downforce and the car will spin. So it was kind of like a seemingly unsporting way of essentially creating a mini DRS flap at high speed, which they don't like. And they've actually, I think it's something crazy, like they have the amount of newtons of energy that you're getting it. I have it here on F1's website. There's also more stringent testings of the rear wing slot gap to limit how much deflection is acceptable from an applied load of 10 newtons to 30 newtons. So basically they're saying make those things a little bit stronger so they don't bend as much in the wind.
I saw some critique that the way the FIA has handled this, and they've handled stuff like this similarly, where a team rolls out something that is kind of dubious in the rules, but the FIA doesn't want to come down too hard on it, but they also don't want to allow it. I've seen some criticism that's actually maximally advantageous for the team that has figured out this little gap in the rules, because if you're time limiting how long the upgrade is going to be there, nobody's going to develop it. So nobody's going to develop nobody is going to put themselves on an even competitive footing, because after a set number of races, you won't be able to use this design at all. And so what you get is a window where you'll probably have a monopoly on this advantage. You kind of claw it out of the regulations, and then it'll go away, so nobody will be able to catch up with you, but you will theoretically have been able to bag a fair bit of advantage for a significant portion of the season that other people can't meet. So I've seen some criticism that's they really need to choose one or the other, right? Ban it outright, or say, hey, well done, clever gap in the rules is legal for this year, and let teams decide whether or not they want to invest in it. But doing sort of a middle of the road approach is actually the strongest guarantor of locking in an advantage like that.
That's interesting. While we're on the technical stuff as well, they do have this new heat hazard thing. So if the forecasted predicted temperature is over 31 degrees centigrade, which is, what is that in F? That's it's
over 80.
87.8 87.8.
Wow.
A heat hazard is declared, and it's at that stage that the teams are they're required to fit the cooling system to the driver, which also increases the amount of weight limit on the cars as well, because obviously they have to have that stuff on them. So this is to battle kind of Singapore and possibly other places, but Singapore was a real problem, and in Drive to Survive this year they actually do stay with Russell after the race, and it's pretty crazy how his core temperature got so high that he had like a medical event basically after the race.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. So
Ocon was out there saying the current state of the cooling devices is unusable.
Okay.
This will be the first time that F1 has done this. Apparently, the design is such that you can't fit in the seat or put your seatbelt on without it being really, really uncomfortable. So the design there may change a little bit, but it's basically a water cooling vest.
They should just
Indy's
do that thing
had
where
these for years.
What'd you say?
IndyCar's had these for years.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, like they're. I mean, obviously.
I guess that makes sense.
Like racetracks are a little hotter in the U.S., but at the same time, a little bit surprised that this is a solved problem. Now, admittedly, F1 cars are they're so tightly, compactly built that if you did decide you wanted to introduce a new thing like a cooling vest, I can't see where it's. Well, there's simply no more room for cockpit.
Custom molded to these drivers' bodies.
Yeah.
They should just do that thing where Kimi Räikkönen's water broke and was just leaking all over him.
You cannot have the drink. Well, as 2025 goes on, or I guess as seasons go on, things kind of tend to get tighter everywhere as teams have more time with the current regulations. And this is the last year of these regulations. So one could expect to see the whole grid even tighter, which I think is why people are saying like, 2025 is going to be a real banger. But you really can never predict these things.
I think that mid pack especially, I think we do have some bottom feeders here. I think, we mentioned Kick Sauber. I think Aston Martin are in a terrible spot as well. I
really?
think.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like, so their biggest problem is Adrian Newey has been on garden leave until the start of this season. And then also, I think their CTO is on garden leave. There was a court case about this, and their CTO is on garden leave until, I believe, June or July. So basically, their technical team working on the car has had none of the new leadership that's part of that has been part of this car. And then also, they are they're the team who's saying, look, we want to be in championship contending cars by 2030. Like, they are forward thinking. They're not thinking about this year. And it looks like the car is not particularly speedy. And then the sort of dark horse maybe of testing is the Mercedes, which was performing well, but people thought maybe it was at the top of its window because of the track conditions and the weather at Bahrain at that time. Like, we saw a similar thing at Silverstone. Silverstone was a cold track last year, and the sort of the high-speed profile of those turns and stuff probably suited the Mercedes a bit more, similar to Bahrain. So we'll see. Melbourne's obviously hotter, but Melbourne's also a fast track. Like, it's one of the fastest tracks on the calendar. Might be the fastest track on the calendar, just for how much of the lap you're going top speed, especially since they reprofiled some of the turns in Sector 2. So, but yeah, we'll have to see about that. Yeah, and honestly, the big question this year is going to be how do all these rookies do? Because there's a lot of them. A lot of them are not in great cars. But then, even someone like Lawson, who's technically not a rookie, but he's in a Red Bull now. That's a very different, humbling experience, as we've seen from other people. So it's going to be interesting to see, and also how tight that gap is between McLaren and Red Bull, because it needs to be tight. Well, it doesn't need to be tight for Max to put himself in contention again for another world championship.
Yeah. Anybody else got any notes from testing, Rob?
So, I guess I'm curious, how real do we think Williams is this year? Because, of teams that have every incentive to just go all, if you think you have a chance to be more competitive than you will otherwise be, and next year it's going to, I think the advantage should be pretty heavily in the works teams next year because the regulation changes the power units. It's going to be their show.
With the asterisks of perhaps Red Bull. Are they a works team? They're making their own engine, but
I kind of consider them. I think for next year, I would consider them that.
Yeah.
With the powertrains effort, but like Williams is going to be dependent on, as they are right now, like what Mercedes ends up doing. But right now, everyone is so locked with similar engine power. I could see them being a team that like pushes all their chips into the center of the table this year. Their testing was good. Like
they have a fastest time.
Carlos stood at the top of the timesheets for overall pace, and the time was not like, if there's sandbagging going on, that was still a time close to the fastest laps we were seeing last year.
right.
So like they are the one team I'm wondering, like, are we seeing something approaching their true position in the pack? Because they are a team I think that would be incentivized to, if you can win, like try and win now, because just their rebuild is still so immature that nothing's guaranteed for them in the future. I think they'll be a very up and down team for a couple of years at least.
Yeah, and this is also, we've had James Vowles there as team principal, turning things around for a few years. So maybe this is a chance to finally see some fruits of that labor getting off Excel.
Yeah, it seems like them and Alpine might be having a little bit of a battle there in the middle. Is the feeling at the moment anyway. Haas is also like an unknown at the moment, because it seems like the Racing Bulls car is maybe not as speedy as it was this time. Like coming out of practice last year, it seemed like testing rather, it seemed like they might be in a good spot, and they were, as it turns out, last year. But
I think they just fired their technical director too.
Well, that's a bad sign, because that's what happened at Renault last year, or Alpine last year. Do you remember they didn't fire them, but their chief aerodynamicist and somebody else left before the season even started, which was not a good sign. But yeah, it looks like that the Haas is an improvement over last year. But how much that mid pack is condensed is going to be very, very interesting, I think, because it was condensed last year. I mean, you saw what happened in Brazil, basically, like Alpine got a 2-3 and were basically jumped 6 places or something. It's completely ridiculous, Yeah. And Haas got sort of done dirty last year, I feel like, a little bit. So, but it does look like that they've, the Flavio effect, man.
It's real, and we're gonna get to it in the news. But before we hit that, we are going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with the news and the track walk. All right, the news. Rob, do you want to kick us off here?
Yeah, so speaking of Racing Bulls and the Red Bull driver situation, so it was big sweepstakes these last couple of years. Who was going to, in the end, who was going to get the rose from Red Bull? Who is going to be given that most blessed of drives, being partnered to Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, the shining gate to a brilliant F1 future. And yes, in the end, Liam Lawson got the nod, despite not an incredible amount of game tape on him. Some good results, but not exactly like world-beating performance. The rumor was Colapinto was someone that Red Bull was very much distracted boyfriend meme about when in his early races. That's kind of how at sea they've been with choosing another driver, which leaves Yuki Tsunoda in a weird position, because there's kind of a to complete the meme, he's the one who's been there the whole time. He's with you. He's been with you for a while. And yet didn't get the nod. And that appears to have caused sort of a change in thinking for him and some of the people sort of around his career. He started out a few weeks ago, at this point, letting go as manager, and hiring new representation, which was sort of, traditionally that is like, when you failed to advance my career, when we did not get the opportunity that was there, then it is time to maybe move on. More alarming for him, one of the things that's like gotten Tsunoda to this point is the fact that his career has been substantially underwritten by Honda. And like the rumor was always that like Honda was going to was sort of insisting and really wanted to see him get a permanent seat in a frontline F1 team. They made some comments like very recently, basically saying that he's on his own at this point. Honda have done everything they can do. These are not quotes you really want if you're Yuki. He needs to take action himself. Honda Racing Corporation President Koji Watanabe said in an interview with JapaneseMotorsport.com, "I want him to make the best choices for himself. He's now in his 5th year, has the ability, and understands the world of F1 well. There's not much more we can do for him. He needs to solidify his support team, including his manager, and secure the necessary seat. He is a professional, after all. Drivers can't rely on Honda forever. Someone of Tsunoda's career level needs to think for himself."
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem with the Red Bull door closing, as it were, it does put him in a very sticky spot, because the RB, the Racing Bulls team, is there to be the feeder team still in some respect, and at a certain point he's just taking up a seat that they can use for that effort. I could see him being like a bit of a Hulkenberg in the like, not to immediately put him in as a veteran who's there to stabilize a lower team, but I could see him he's become pretty consistent, and he's definitely fighty. But yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons why F1. I think cultural. I think there's definitely he's fighting against that for sure within F1 as well. But yeah, and it's a shame. I think he's a great driver. He's learned a lot over the past few seasons. I think the issues are maybe that his ceiling's not quite as high as some of the others, and that's ultimately what you need in one of your cars is you need somebody who can get more out of the car than the car can give it. And yeah, that unfortunately maybe is where his not his weakness is, but he just doesn't have enough in that respect perhaps to get one of those big teams to go for him.
Yeah, but we'll get to it. But the field will be expanding, so there will be more seats, and I could absolutely see him becoming like an Ocon or a Magnussen, just kind of jumping around.
I think something that's been awkward about this whole Red Bull situation, though, is there's this NFL coach, Eric Bieniemy, who for years people were like, surely this guy should be a front runner for a head coaching position. And at first there was a suspicion that like if he wasn't getting these jobs, it was in part because like the NFL is very racist. He's I believe he's a black coach, and so there was a theory about that. But it went on long enough, and people were not giving him a hard look for a coaching position that the narrative began to swing around to like, okay, enough people have looked at him that what are they seeing that they're not liking, and you sort of see everyone sort of get in their own head about like nobody knows exactly what the deal is. Why this person isn't being like considered for this advancement, but the assumption increasingly becomes like this person has had the tires kicked so hard by people who are like good at assessing these things, and they haven't moved forward. So, and I think that's what Red Bull's kind of done to him, is in a weird way keeping him at ex Toro Rosso for this many years, and repeatedly being like anyone but Yuki to sort of put in that next seat. I think has kind of sounded a panic button about him with other teams, which tend to be conservative, right? Like there's a paranoia about they don't want to miss out on talent, but they really do not want to be someone who makes someone else's mistake.
And in a way, you could say that sort of the inverse, and maybe ultimately the same thing happened to Daniel Ricciardo, in that Red Bull were sort of so willing to give him a second chance over and over and over again, but they squeezed all the blood out of the stone immediately, and he became similarly sort of, I think, damaged goods to a lot of other teams, because they thought, well, okay, well, if he's not able to step up to the plate. Not to get ahead of my Drive to Survive stuff, but the Daniel Ricciardo what went wrong last year stuff, it was I think there was some really good interviews with him about all that. Yeah.
Well, speaking of mistakes, Mohammed Ben Sulayem.
Just a walking one. Yeah, absolutely. We love thinking about Mohammed Ben Sulayem, don't we, folks? We love discussing him. Everyone, for too many years, you could follow F1 and you wouldn't necessarily know who the FIA president was or what he was doing. But now
I make the rules.
you think about him all the time. You see him.
This is like something that if this was the one job of the FIA was to not appoint somebody who would do this, who would be this guy, because this has happened in the past, and it's literally the one thing we did not want to happen thing from Prerace, and like he's just gotten worse and worse. The more he's criticized, the more he digs in with his weirdness, and I'm sick of him at this stage.
I think I saw this piece by Luke Winkie that he's like, America is under siege by a radical force, losers. And I feel like that's kind of a worldwide disaster right now, is absolutely. That like we are surrounded by people in influential positions who are like just have strong radioactive loser energy just like pouring off them. And because they're losers, they're like, oh, I can monopolize your attention. Nobody's ever given me that before, so I'm gonna make you think about me, and I will refuse to go away. And so his latest provocation. This is clearly him trying to. This feels to me like him trying for something that like what's a crowd pleasing thing I can suggest that people will be like, wow, epic. Wow,
no
the
more
FIA
street
president's
circuits.
He's really on one. He wants to bring back the V10s.
Oh.
And we can do that now.
Talk about a thing that sounds like a
fuels.
good idea if anyone else but him mentioned it. I just now that he's saying it, I'm like,
he's turned against it.
Right.
So his position is that we could bring back V10s running on sustainable fuel. And so it wouldn't really be in any tension with F1 sustainability or net zero goals, because we would have these e-fuels that it would be free. You know, you'd burn them, but they've been created so sustainably that, like, honestly, you're doing the planet a favor by burning more of them. So that is how we can just go back to like big honking gas guzzling, and yes, admittedly, awesome F1 engines. So, you know, as you might expect, like Max Verstappen was like, that would. It's interesting. I sympathize with Max here. Anything he says now generates a headline. This generated an article on Autosport. Verstappen agrees with FIA president on V10s returning to F1. His actual quote: "Of course, I think it's a very nice idea, but whether it's possible or not, that's obviously a completely different story." I always think it's better to not just shout so many things. It's better to try to solve things behind the scenes.
He keeps
that
going.
would be better for everyone.
Twist
I
the knife,
think I
Max.
really
Twist the
like
knife.
Max Verstappen now.
Yeah.
I'm getting increasingly Max pilled.
Yeah.
is the thing.
If anyone's in a position to not give a shit about standing on ceremony for this guy, it's Verstappen for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, they basically had to trank him and truss him up for the O2 Arena thing.
Oh, yeah.
So
God,
there was
did we
that.
talk about that? I hated that thing.
No.
From start
we
to finish.
discussed it. We alluded to it on the preseason primer.
Oh my God.
But
Awful.
so, but the thing is, like that is kind of the nail on the head. So, is this actually feasible? And Autosport ran this piece that not really. And part of it is that the synthetic fuels thing is still kind of a pie in the sky idea. There's obviously there's certainly a wish for this to exist from petrochemical companies. Like obviously they would love for that to exist. I think I am sure that like I am sure there's probably a slide deck somewhere in Exxon or Royal Dutch Shell where it's like 0 calorie gasoline basically.
Yeah.
Like can we create gasoline for an age of climate change that people will be like it just doesn't matter, it's good. But we aren't there. We can plausibly make that case. Like the process of producing such a fuel is itself right now going to be pretty energy intensive, which means that maybe the fuel's clean. How you produce the fuel, this is the thing with ethanol, right? Like you can get a very clean fuel out of it. That's cool. But the problem is you actually spent more energy and put more carbon into the atmosphere in the process of creating it. And then you have the other issue, which is that is this still going to be a direction that motor technology is going to be interested in moving, because that's always kind of a necessary component of this, is for people to put their like top tier researchers into a thing. Like, yes, like F1, unlike maybe arguably like endurance cars, have somewhat less relevance to the road. It really is more of just a pure like brand and prestige play. But still, there is a desire to have F1 power units have some relationship to the direction that R&D is heading in the motor industry. V10s ain't it. We're gonna be lucky if cars are if we still see any like V8s still being made in the next decade. That is just not where things are headed. And so the notion that you can be like, we're bringing V10s back, and that all the works teams are going to be like, woo, yeah, let's do it, that's fanciful. And they're certainly not going to do it because Mohammed bin Sulayem told them to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a nice dream having those loud, nimble little cars zipping around. Like the thing that makes the modern cars so gigantic and heavy is the battery, right, of the hybrid system. So it's a cool idea. Wonder if it will get any further. Also, maybe not going any further, an Alpine driver, Danny.
Oh man, already we're getting into the
silly season.
Silly season hasn't even started yet. Yeah, so basically this all goes down to I guess Franco Colapinto and Jack Doohan. So Jack Doohan, who you may not recognize now that he has shaved his head. Apparently,
Oh no!
Yeah, the hair is gone, man. He's a pure prison break now.
It is not a good sign when the guy just shaves his head.
So the reason why, apparently, is that the shaving head. This is not the main part of the story, but the reason why he did it apparently is that he was doing like super intensive training before the season, and his long hair, and he was doing it like inside, not going for runs, and so his hair was constantly just sweating in his face the whole time. So he literally just like went out, got a pair of things, and just like shaved his head, because he was like, well, this is, if I run outside, at least it's like it blows in my face, but now it's just annoying. So he just shaved his head. Okay, that's his reasoning apparently. It might all be for naught, though, because Franco Colapinto is waiting in the wings, and according to Planet F1, they have learned that Colapinto will be in attendance in Melbourne, with the 21-year-old poised to be on site as Alpine's reserve driver. So he is Alpine's reserve driver for the moment, and basically word on the street is that Jack Doohan has basically a couple of months, so a handful of races, to prove that he should be the one in the seat. Otherwise, Franco Colapinto, who did have 2 point scoring appearances for Williams last year, when he came in for, who did he come in for? Who got injured?
No one got injured. They kicked out Logan Sargent.
Oh, that's what it was. Sorry, when Sargent got kicked out, yeah. He also binned it in the wall a few times, so
sure did.
Worth mentioning that. Which Williams especially do not like that. So yeah, it's an interesting spot with Williams already committed to fielding Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon for 2025. Team principal James Vowes describes Colapinto's move to Alpine as his best chance of returning to a race seat, potentially as soon as this season. So it's a bit harsh on Doohan. He's just broken in, and already he's got another rookie breathing down his neck. So we'll have to see how he does. I'm hoping this is genuinely a question of if he does better, if he's not up to snuff, he gets kicked out, and not this has already been decided and we're just gonna let you race a little bit before we bring Franco in. Hey, look, it's Flavio's world, man. So he's a cutthroat dude, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's just willing to do that. So yeah, we'll have to see. It looks like they have a better car this year. Hope it looks like. But how good it is, I guess, where its ceiling is the big question.
Well, Danny, speaking of Flavio Briatore.
Yes, exactly. The other side of Flavio, the cheat who got kicked out of F1 and then on appeal was not banned from motorsport for the rest of his life because of Crashgate. The incident that happened in the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix that, according to Felipe Massa, led to him not winning the championship, although I think you'll outside of Brazil, you'd be hard going to find an F1 fan who believes with that particular version of the butterfly effect. But Felipe Massa, as you know, we have been covering his soon to happen maybe lawsuit with F1 about the Crashgate and what happened, and the fact that he thinks it cost him a championship and a lot of money, etc., etc. He has gotten his date in court. It's in October of this year, but apparently there is a fairly decent chance that it will be thrown out before that date. That is the sort of the status we're at the moment, and we will continue updating you on Massa Court Watch as we hope to rectify the ills of the past. The most important ills of the past, the 2008 World Championship.
All right. Well, yes, we will be following that as it develops, and
or not,
or not. And just to close things out here in the news section, some quick hits for everyone.
Quick hits.
We talked a lot about Cadillac entering the sport at the end of last year. Or we talked about it last year. They would enter in 2026. It seems like they now officially will be entering as the 11th team in Formula One in 2026. So that has been, the approval stamp has been committed. Their team principal, Graham Loudon, is out there saying, or well, rather answering questions that people have about, what about drivers? Are you going to sign an American guy? And he's basically saying, we select on merit. F1 is not a playground. This is the pinnacle of world motorsport. Although he does point out that because of them being in limbo until right now, they have been sort of out of the driver market. So there are a lot of drivers that are tied up. But Sergio Perez, Valtteri Bottas, Zhou Guan Yu lost their seats recently. And there's some talent in there.
It's also worth mentioning that like F1 contracts are... like, you can't force a driver to stay with you if they don't want to be there. So, like, if somebody decides that they want to leave and go to Cadillac, like, sure, there will be, like, clauses in there about how much it's going to cost them as a driver. But if somebody wants to leave, they'll leave. You know what I mean? We haven't seen it very much because I think it's seen as bad sort of... it's bad juju for later employers if you're acting like that. But if we're looking at someone like Alonso, who's suddenly who's gonna eat dirt for another year sitting in that Aston, if he doesn't believe in the project for next year, perhaps you know what I mean. I'm sure he will with Newey and everything, but it's not just the free agents that they're going to be going for, I suspect.
Yeah, Russell. His contract is up at the end of 2025.
Well, we're going to learn a lot about Russell this year as well. We're going to see how much of a number one driver he is.
Yeah. Just to close out the Cadillac stuff, Loudon says in response to people pointing out, hey, Colton Herta is
he's American.
At Andretti. He's American. He's American.
America. Colton Herta.
He apparently does not have the required number of super license points. If you're unfamiliar with the super license, it's points that the FIA ascribes to drivers in other series based on how well they do there and how similar that series is to F1, to basically say, like, listen, you need a certain level of experience to sit in one of these insane cars. So that's an impediment. He would have to do very well in IndyCar to earn the number of points. Quote, does he lack, and this is from Autosport, does he lack of reaching or the lack of being able or being at the threshold for the super license in any way? Okay, sorry. Does his lack of reaching or the lack of being at the threshold for the super license in any way affect his ability to drive a race car? No, he's incredibly talented, so it's not shock news that we would be looking to Colton alongside a bunch of other drivers as well. He's not the only one actually in that situation, and he won't be the first. He won't be the last driver where there's some uncertainty due to super license points, but we just have to live with that. That's a regulation. We have to respect it. So
I love this conviction that Americans just yearning. I would love to watch this race, but there's just no Americans in it, and so I'm just not going to watch it. I can't enjoy a motorsports race unless I know an American is in one of those
fruity
cars.
Euros in here. You know, they look at F1 and they see that Sacha Baron Cohen character from Talladega Nights just multiplied across every car, and they need
First
a
of all,
hot-blooded American.
Valtteri Bottas has become much more of a redneck than Daniel Ricciardo
100%.
could ever dreamed of being. Second,
Trailer Trash Podas, great era.
like, I think the thing that I think would probably get more Americans, like motorsports fans, attention would probably be like, it would be somebody from like one of the series that's big over here, whether they're an American driver or not. Like, I think, well, I doubt. I think the overlap of people who watch IndyCar but don't watch F1 is like zero. Like, probably that's mostly a second series for a lot of people. But like, if I'm Cadillac and I'm like, who's someone who's like popular with the home crowds here? Again,
Daniel
I'm like,
Ricciardo.
Alex Palou.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want a good driver at this point.
Oh wow.
Oh, wow. Jesus.
Shots fired. All right, a couple other ones here. We just did our rundown in the primer of ways you can watch F1. There's a new tier of F1 TV, F1 TV Premium.
What?
Yes, more better than F1 TV Pro.
What does it get you? 50% off the $100 hot dogs in Vegas?
4K UHD and HDR.
Oh, I'm in.
Hey, wait a second, what?
I'm in.
Yeah.
Hang on, though. I need the bit rates.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Well, there's a bunch of asterisks on their website here.
Upscale.
Subject to your
AI
internet and device
upscaled.
capabilities. Yeah. They also have, you can watch on multiple devices, up to 6 simultaneously, which I think they have a graphic showing, on your TV is the race, but on your phone is the, map and statistics and stuff. You can also build your own custom multi-feed view.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I wanted this.
It is $130 a year. There is a
thought you were gonna say a
7-day
month.
free trial. Yeah, no. That's up from F1 TV Pro is $85 a year. Yeah, both of those have a 7-day free trial. So
Use offer code MULTI21. and their website for signing up to this new F1 is called patreon.com/shiftf1.
last bit here, we have mentioned that the Spanish Grand Prix will be taken over by a circuit in Madrid. It's being described as a hybrid circuit.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh, is it?
1.5 kilometers will be on public roads. We now have a name for it. It is called the Madring.
Oh, no.
Because it's in Madrid.
Shut up.
Yep.
I couldn't, as if I didn't hate this whole thing anymore. This is gonna force people into like shouting for Catalonian independence. This is just like, this is awful. I'm sad that Barcelona's gone because that track, I like that track a lot. I think that's a cool track. Them calling it a hybrid is basically being like, we did the Miami thing. Like, this isn't happening in the middle of Madrid. This is happening out in some business park outside of Madrid. This is not Baku. They're not, and it is yet another. We are doing half of this in a glorified car park and half of this on the street circuits around this industrial park. Like, dude, it sucks. Who knows if the race will be good, because Miami ended up being weirdly good a couple of times, but just on paper, this is the soulless direction of F1, and at a time where fans are more than ever. I think Red Bull did a poll in the off season of whether or not people wanted street circuits or regular tracks, and it won like 80% or something towards tracks. But I worry about the future.
Want the street circuits.
Who do?
I think promoters want the street
100%.
circuits.
100%. Yeah.
But so, like, last year I watched the Vuelta, the Spanish, like the Tour of Spain cycling race.
Oh, cool.
And look, I hope our Spanish listeners are not going to be offended by this, but like, you have weeks of just beautiful like Spanish cities all over. Like, God damn, what a gorgeous country! This is incredible. Barcelona, just unreal beauty. They ended the race in Madrid.
Madrid, yeah.
Boy, does that place look like it was ruled by fucking fascists.
Yeah.
For about 50 years. Like, it looked like the architecture that people associate with like soulless Stalinist hellscapes that is a good portion of Madrid. And even the stuff that's like meant to be kind of impressive has the strong vibe of like petrostate folly type things being thrown down there. It's just not. It looks like a very powerful capital city, but not necessarily like a beautiful like cultural hub.
Yeah.
And the notion that like you're moving the Spanish Grand Prix to this place, away from Catalonia is pretty grim. It was almost photogenic of locations. I was like, you know what? I think I'm a separatist at this point. I embrace it. On behalf of other regions of Spain, death to the Castilians.
Yeah. Madrid has the problem of, I guess there are parts of Madrid that are really beautiful, and because if you go back far enough, but you have to find them, and they're not necessary, and they're definitely not where this track is happening. So yeah, it's a. Yeah, I don't know. Look, it feels like a backward step for me is to be moving away from tracks like Barcelona, which used to be like, I mean, we used to do testing there. It used to be like the sort of one of the most important tracks, but there we are.
Well, we do have one more year on its contract, so it's expected that there will be 2 races in Spain next year.
Oh, okay.
So the Barcelona Circuit de Catalunya and the Madrid.
Oh.
They have a quote here from the race promoters. Ultimately, it is more than just a name. It is a genuine, distinctive, and iconic brand designed to resonate with a modern and engaged F1 audience.
People have been looking for that Madrizzle.
That's right.
You cannot call something a ring if it is not a circuit. Like that is a.
If it's not in Motegi,
nomenclature
I don't want to hear about it.
That is used for actual, like, whatever.
She calls it a May and egg.
So cute.
All right, Danny, let's move from one corner of the world to a completely different one. Tell us about our track in Australia.
Australia, Melbourne. We're heading to the beautiful Australian Grand Prix, which is back as the start of the year. Thank you, Ramadan. That's the reason why we're here, is that it's in where we have been going to Bahrain for the opening for the past couple of years. They are being pushed back into April because of Ramadan. So we get top billing again. First time we've had it since, well, technically 2019. We were supposed to race there in 2020, but a little something happened in March of 2020, which kicked that can down the road another year. So this is in Melbourne, in Victoria. Gorgeous part of Australia. Very lush this time of year. It's a bona fide. This is a good street track. This is another one of these mixed tracks, but it's not a new one like Miami. It's one that's been around for a long time. So 2 main roads that happen around this park, piece of parkland in the middle of Melbourne, or somewhere in Melbourne rather. And then they have some elements of the track like the start-finish straight, some other parts which were built for the F1 race itself. F1's been in Australia for longer than when this started. It was 1986 was the first time they went to Melbourne. They were in Adelaide prior to that, predominantly. This track is very fast. It's bumpy. The tarmac here, like I said, is kind of used, for road cars during the rest of the year. It also needs to be rubbered in pretty heavily because there's no other racing as far as I know that happens here. There's for the rest of the year. Maybe there's some other stuff, I don't know, but certainly no fast cars in the weeks leading up to this thing. Verstappen's average speed was 250 kilometers an hour during quali last year, so it just gives you an idea of how fast this thing was. A big part of this is because they refactored what is now the section between turn 8 and turn 9, which used to have a fairly heavy braking zone in it, and now it's basically sped up to try and increase, I think, the overtaking chances into turn 9, which is the start of sector 3. They also, I mentioned at the preseason primer, they have done some refactoring to turn 6 as well, which is where we had the very strange George Russell Alonso crash, where Alonso made Russell crash even though he was in front of him, which was a very weird situation.
He's a master of the craft.
I know, yeah. What a hero. But apart from that, it looks like it's relatively the same as last year. I think this track looks great. You get a lot of action. We'll get some action into turn 1, of course, at the start of the race. But turn 3 on the first lap is always a good bit of fun. That is the second DRS straight. There are 4 DRS zones in this on this track. There are 2 detection points, so you've basically got 2 doubles. Which is the start of the race, and then one leading from sector 2 into sector 3. And yeah, it's generally you're going to get overtakes. I mean, I think we had a pretty overtake heavy track last year. It was in a good spot, and it's a fast one, and it's also one of these ones that's like it's not the thinnest track in the calendar, but it gets tight enough, and it's got gravel in a lot of these spots as well, so it can bite drivers. So we'll have to see if the rookies do well here. Usually temperature here is not particularly crazy. I'm sure you'll tell us in a second, Drew. 58 laps around this one, 5.278 kilometers or 3.279 miles. And yeah, usually a good time. This is one I've always wanted to go to. Seems like a fun track, and I think it's a good spot to open the season on. The Aussie fans are, across all sports, are genuinely pretty fantastic.
Yeah, well, thanks, Danny. Before we get to weather here, the thing I did over the break was basically a project compiling all of my own F1 stats so that I can see, I can tell you how drivers do and teams on specific tracks.
Okay.
So I'm calling this section the form book.
The form book. I'm going to call it in my head canon, Drew's Magic Ball. What do you call those things?
A Magic 8 Ball.
No, the one that like a fortune teller.
A crystal ball?
Drew's crystal ball.
I'm ready to play the Cones of Dunsmore. Hit me.
All right, so over the past 5 races that we've had at Albert Park, Lewis Hamilton has done very well. So has Max Verstappen. When he finishes, he's got 2 DNFs. Charles Leclerc also does fairly well. Ferrari, this is one of their best tracks in the last few years, does similarly well as Mercedes. Red Bull, not as well as those few. Is also a good track for McLaren recently.
Okay.
And in the last 5 years, for tracks that we've raced at more than once, Albert Park is number 1 for most DNFs.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting. Is that over the past 5 years or in general?
Over the past 5 years.
5 years. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not even that it's the first race. Huh. Okay. Yeah. I can see that, I guess. Yeah, there is. I can think of a crash at almost every turn here. So yeah, I can see that for sure.
Other drivers who tend to go well here: Hülkenberg, Stroll, Tsunoda. Drivers who don't do so hot: Sainz, Ocon, and Russell.
Okay. Interesting to see the Hamilton Ferrari does well. Maybe that'll, because there's a big question mark over how good that Ferrari is as well. I mean, it's question marks everywhere. The testing is just like, as Rob was saying, is a magic 8 ball part of the time. But yeah, that'll be interesting to see if it's a spot that Hamilton and Ferrari are happy with. Maybe we could see see the thing that I think everyone will kind of be into is a fast Lewis and a Ferrari. I mean, I'm sure there are people who won't, but it's a compelling image for sure.
Yeah, I say Sainz doesn't usually do well here. That is a median of his finishes. He did win last time. And before him, Max Verstappen, and in 2022, Charles Leclerc.
Right. So, there you go.
So we'll see.
He's either in it to win it or he's out.
Yeah. I would love to hear what people want to hear stats-wise about this stuff. I'm also going to... Another goal of mine was to be able to tell you with each race finish how that race affected the championship. So with this second place, this driver moves up now into 5th in the championship, which I've had trouble finding elsewhere. So things like that, let me know.
Thanks for the form book, Drew.
You're welcome. Weather-wise, at qualifying time, it's going to be a little warm. 32 degrees Celsius, which is 90 Fahrenheit.
Crack out the still suits.
Yeah, maybe. Light wind and a 10% chance of rain. This is all on qualifying day, which increases, everyone.
What?
45% chance of precipitation on race day.
You'd love to see it.
With much cooler temperatures. We're talking, let's see, exact race time is 3 p.m. local. Wow, yeah, 22 Celsius or 72 Fahrenheit. So it drops off quite a bit with that incoming weather. Oh, and
Mercedes will like that.
the wind picks up as well. We're looking at 12 miles an hour or 19.
That could put it in the Mercedes window again, because it is another high speed, track, high corner speeds, and if it cools down a bit, that could be saucy.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Well,
I don't have any standings to read you right now, nor do I have a link for the F1 Fantasy League, because I don't believe that's been started up yet. I checked yesterday. But once that does, we will, of course, plug it in the show notes. Yes, F1 has a fantasy sports league, and we usually join one, or we start one for listeners of the pod. So be on the lookout for that. You can also send us an email, shiftf1podcast@gmail.com or f1.cool/emails. You can also hit us up on the socials. There's links to that in the show notes as well. And that's us around the internet. Should we take it around the world, Danny?
let's race around the world. Yeah.
It's not just F1 going on this weekend in Australia, no less. The Repco Supercars will be joining F1 in Melbourne, the Albert Park Grand Prix circuit. We've got the Craftsman trucks racing at the Las Vegas, what is it called? Motor Speedway. I'm going to pull up the official NASCAR. Oh my God, yes, on the cookies. Oh, they've changed how okay, never mind. Okay, EcoSave 200 is the name of the truck race. MotoGP is back.
Game. People should save it.
They are in Argentina for the Rio Hondo round. Formula 2 and Formula 3 will be joining Formula 1 at Albert Park. The IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship is at Sebring for the 12 Hours of Sebring. NASCAR Xfinity Series also at Las Vegas Motor Speedway for the Leuna.
The what?
The capital L, lowercase I.
Luna. You sound like one of the Californians from SNL.
Take the one who wants the Leuna. Capital L, lowercase I, and then capitals UNA.
Leuna.
Exclamation point.
What are you doing here?
That's a union.
Oh.
Labor's International Union of North America.
Oh,
Okay.
beautiful.
Motocross Grand Prix, they're in Spain for the MXGP of Castilla-La Mancha.
Castilla-La Mancha.
And we got NASCAR. Also at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway for the Pennzoil 400 presented by Jiffy Lube.
Lube me up.
That is it.
Lube me up and throw me in, daddy.
Whoa. And Formula 1, maybe you've heard of it, will be kicking off. I'm going to read these in Pacific time because Australia always messes things up. If you're on the East Coast, just add 3 hours. Thursday, March 13th, is when things are kicking off. Free Practice 1 is at 6:30 p.m. on ESPN News, followed by Free Practice 2 at 10 p.m. Pacific on ESPN 2. So that'd be 1 a.m. Eastern, following day. Friday, March 14th, Free Practice 3 is at 6:30 p.m. I believe on ESPN 3. Kind of hard to tell, frankly, on the ESPN site. And then qualifying is 10 p.m. on Friday, Pacific time. And then 1 a.m. for Eastern on ESPN U. And the race, everyone, Saturday, March 15th at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern on ESPN.
Fair dinkum. I just finished watching the Australian season of the survival show Alone, which was a very good season. Alone has gotten a little bit slow in the past few years, but the Australian one was very good. So I need some new Australian media, located media. So this is perfect for me. Thank you, F1.
Great. Well, that's what's going on this weekend. Danny, what happened on this day in the past?
Time to pull out the book, folks. If you do not know, every podcast I read from this wonderful book, Formula One on This Day by Rob Burnett. Thank you. Shout out to my wife for getting this for me for my birthday or Christmas or my birthday or Jesus' birthday, whatever, a couple of years ago. And we'll see how many races we can get in before it mentioning someone's untimely demise. On this day in the past... do we go by? Sugar. We go the day after. Damn it, that was a good one. Okay, I might throw in an extra one.
Okay.
This day in the past, after a broken leg had put paid to Michael Schumacher's chances of the 1999 World Championship, and Eddie Irvine hadn't quite been able to do the job in his absence, Schumacher was determined to get it right in 2000 and deliver Ferrari's first driver's title since 1979. He must have been worried when he was beaten in qualifying for the Australian Grand Prix by both McLarens, but in the race, both Hakkinen and Coulthard suffered engine failures, and Schumi took the win, with his new teammate Rubens Barrichello second. He had started as he meant to go on and was world champion by the end of the year. That's crazy to think it had been like 21 years since Ferrari had won that period. Today in 2006, it was a similar story. This time at the Bahrain GP. Again, Schumacher took the win in the opening round of the season, and again, he was followed dutifully home by his teammate, this time Felipe Massa. Rubens Barrichello and Felipe Massa, two drivers who probably still go to therapy for being Michael Schumacher's teammate during that period. Yeah. And the one I wanted to mention, which is the day before that I did miss, that I wanted to stick in, was Kimi Räikkönen proved he is just as fast on snow as on tarmac today in 2007 when he won the 24-kilometer enduro sprint event at the Kopparberg King race in Finland. They don't mention this in the actual text, but Kopparberg is delicious Swedish cider, by the way. Kopparberg King race is snowmobiles.
Oh wow!
Yeah, this is not rally on snow. I don't know why they don't mention the fact that it's snowmobiles, but
it's like 24 kilometers. It must be a fast race.
Exactly right. He competed under the name James Hunt, the racer to whom he is often compared. So I thought that was pretty good. There we go. We got 1.5 entries there without anyone dying. Really amazing.
Yeah.
I want some Swedish cider now.
All right. Well, final thoughts ahead of this first race, Danny.
Excited. I hope the season is fun. I hope there's battles all around. And yeah, as Rob said, the roll of the dice that is testing, we will see what happens in Melbourne once the rubber hits the road.
Yeah, Rob, final thoughts.
I'm just hoping it's not a Williams Mirage. I'm ready to believe.
Yeah, same. Well, if you out there would like to support this show and get access to all of our bonus episodes, the ad-free version of the podcast, and the official Shift+F1 Discord, you can do so over at patreon.com/ShiftF1. Go take advantage of those start of season promotions. Exactly. Going on until April. Multi21, have a good race weekend, everyone. We will see you all next week.